A Surprise for Gappy, Book 1 of the Young Vampire Adventures by Star Donovan. Illustrations by Anne Catherine Liu. Chapter 4, Crazy Parents. Gappy sat with his mouth open, looking from Mom to Dad and waiting for them to smile and say it was all a joke. But they didn't. In fact, they were not smiling at all. They looked very serious, especially Mom, who seemed as if she were really angry with Dad. His mother sighed. "We did hope you weren't going to turn into a vampire like your dad and I. You see, often the children of vampires stay normal humans and never become vampires themselves. If it is going to happen, their bodies usually begin changing around the time of their 9th birthday. Well, you're 9 years old now, Gappy, and we think you're becoming one. That's why you fainted today and felt dizzy and hungry. I wanted to wait until you were a little older, but Dad thought we should tell you now because the hungry dizzy spells are probably going to start happening more and more often." "No!" Gappy shouted, his eyes bulging out in confusion and fright. He felt as if he were in the Twilight Zone. He jumped up from the couch and punched his fists against his thighs. "This is stupid. You're both crazy," he yelled. "Vampires aren't real. You're making it up. Why are you trying to frighten me?" "Listen to me," Dad commanded, leaning forward on the couch to look his son straight in the eye. "It's true. I know it's really scary and difficult for you to believe, but you'll have to face it. You are a vampire. The blood test at the hospital proves that you're anemic. That means you need more iron in your blood for your body to make red blood cells. All humans need iron, but vampires need more of it than regular humans do." You mean vampires aren't human?" Gappy stammered. Mom snorted. "Of course we're human," Dad said, chuckling. "We're just like regular humans. Vampires call them regs for short. But with a little extra special something about us, that's all. Actually, a lot of extra special somethings." "But Dad, vampires bite people's necks to suck their blood." Gappy gulped in a strangled voice as his throat suddenly closed with fear. He wrinkled his nose in disgust and rubbed it hard. "That's gross. I could never do that." "Oh, Gappy, you don't have to bite people's necks like you see in the movies," said Mom gently. "As Dad told you, we're modern vampires. It's true that our ancestors used to suck blood in the olden days, but what vampires do now is eat lots of liver and kidneys, raw red meat, and other foods that contain a lot of iron. Plus, they take vitamins and iron supplements, so they don't have to bite people's necks to survive. And no one ever has to know that we, are vampires." "Liver and kidneys and raw meat? That's yuck. And double gross." Gappy looked to his father for reassurance. "Is that true, Dad?" Dad nodded, smiling at his son's horrified expression. "Yes, it is. It might seem gross to you now, but you'll get used to it. As I said, it's really a lot simpler being a vampire these days." "So we're not like Dracula then?" Gappy asked in a small voice. "No," his dad chuckled. "We're not like Dracula." Gappy thought for a moment. "But what are people going to say? The kids will tease me so much at school. No one will want to be my friend. They'll all be scared of me." "Gappy," Mom said, kneeling down by Dad. She reached out with her long white fingers and took both of Gappy's hands in hers. "You can never, ever, ever tell anyone. It has to be a secret. It's our secret. Just us, the Grapple family. Okay?" "I can't even tell Prue?" Gappy asked. Dad shook his head. "No, Gappy, not even Prue." Mom shook her head too. "People just wouldn't understand if you told them. For one thing, they wouldn't believe you. And yes, it would give them a big excuse for teasing you. And what would happen if they did believe you? Would you like to have scientists poking and prodding you and keeping you locked up like an animal so they could study you? They'd want to write papers about you and talk about you on TV and newspapers and magazines like you were something strange, scary, and dangerous. Would that be fun?" "No," Gappy said, shaking his head and rubbing his nose again. A thought struck him. "Hey, Dad, what about sleeping in coffins in the daytime and stuff like that? How come you don't do that either?" Dad laughed, and his mustache crinkled as he grinned. "Well, over the years, vampires have gotten more used to the sunshine." As long as we're careful every day about using special sunscreen that some of our vampire scientists have invented, the sun doesn't bother us too badly." Gappy shook his head. This was all a bit much to take in and understand all at once. He looked solemnly at his parents, and they looked back at him, Mom still kneeling by his dad. Thoughts were churning around in his head. He wanted to know so many things, but he felt so hyper suddenly that he could not think of the questions to ask. Everyone was silent for a few moments, lost in their own worlds. "Well, I think I'd better go and fix dinner," Mom said after a while, getting up and heading for the kitchen. She stopped in the doorway and looked back at Gappy, who was still standing in the middle of the room, whistling softly between his teeth and trying to get his thoughts together. "I know this has been a big shock for you, Gappy. It's a lot to take in and think about, and you'll probably need a day or two to get used to the idea. Why don't you go get your homework and come and keep me company in the kitchen?" Dad patted his son on the shoulder and picked up his newspaper. "That's a good idea, Livy." Gappy went upstairs to his room. "Boy, do I feel weird," he thought, "sort of wobbly and excited inside, like I'm starting out on a big adventure that might be fun, but difficult too. I wonder if that's how my friend Lucy felt when her parents told her she was adopted, like she was suddenly a different person than she'd always thought she was. Yeah, that's it," Gappy nodded to himself. "I used to be a normal kid, but now I'm suddenly something different. I mean, I'm still me, but I'm not the same me. Am I a better me or a worse me? And what's going to happen next?" He shook his head. "I should do what Miss Pinsweep tells us in class when people are getting hyper. Think of one thing at a time and then move on to the next thing. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I just can't think straight like this. There are so many things going around in my head, I feel like I'm going to explode." Visit Gappy at www.gappy.tv.